Goodness.
You're right.
Now, this must be what menopause feels like.
You all about set?
Yep.
I'm good.
Ready to party?
Yeah.
What we are? Wow. This is
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just reaching in my bag for my vuvuzela.
very ambivalent crowd here.
Like, yay.
All right. I'm Kristen, and with me today is like everyone.
Full house.
Anyone
Yeah,
is anyone.
every seat is taken.
Right. Amber
Yes.
and Brandon.
Hello. I got my burp
And-
out of the way.
Thank you. And Gary
Yep, hello.
and Sarah
Yeah.
and Will.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is going to be a nightmare to edit. I was
You
telling
have fun
them,
with that.
Yeah, that I haven't touched the 5-track recording yet, so the 6 is going to be,
Ooh.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
20% more fun. We're talking about the Blair Witch Project.
Yay.
Amber is
Yeah.
looking at me with this.
Yeah, I wasn't really excited about this.
Me
movie.
neither.
I was curious to see, what I would think about it again.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about it is that if it works for you, then it's like one of the most horrific things you've ever seen.
Sure.
But if it doesn't, it's just like, two people in the woods yelling Josh for like,
It's Snapchat.
exactly, for 45 minutes. But
Had everybody seen it before?
I
Yeah.
have, yeah.
I have never seen it before.
I had neither.
Like it came out when I was like 11 or whatever, so I wasn't allowed to see it. Especially because I grew up in a religious
Right.
setting. So this was a no. You cannot watch this movie, Amber.
Did anybody see it in theaters?
oh yeah, I saw it in theaters
Yeah.
and people were really into it.
Really?
Yeah, the whole, I mean, the thing that actually makes it work for me, because I'm one of those people who thinks it's like really creepy and scary, is that, I mean, when the lights are down and it's a full theater and it's just on the big screen, it's like, the home, watching it at home, which is
Right.
what I've done
Right.
recently, doesn't compare.
Right.
Because,
Well, and especially if you've spent like a decent amount of time in the woods,
Oh,
you know
sure.
how creepy it can get.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like I can remember going to the cabin with you when we were kids and being terrified just because it's scary when it's that dark and you don't know what's going on
Yeah,
around
that's
you.
there's no ambient light at all.
Yeah.
Like it is just dark out there.
And it's kind of horrifying.
It can be.
I can
Certainly can.
feel their fear because I know.
Watching it in a theater sounds nauseating.
well, I took my Dramamine beforehand, so
I
it was
probably
fine.
should have, because I definitely at a certain point was like, okay, first of all, I can't see what's happening anyway. Second, I'm not hearing anything that's helping me. And third, I'm starting to feel sick. So I'll just
Right.
close my eyes for a minute.
Well, and I personally wasn't looking at the screen a lot because I'm afraid of jump scares. And so I kept being like, Brandon, is there going to be a jump scare?
we had to preface you watching it by saying there's no jump scare.
Yeah.
You don't see the witch.
Yeah.
It's not a jump scare kind of feel.
Which is like, it feels like it would be like in today's movies, or like this build up, the camera and the shaking, and then it's like someone's gonna pop out, and then no, nothing ever popped out. So I was happy about that.
See, and I think the suspense like that is what does it for me. Because I'm also one of those people that really loves this movie, and I find it horrifying.
Will, when did you first see it?
I would have been in my young tweens probably.
Wow.
And I remember watching this on pay-per-view back when pay-per-view used to be the TV channel that you would pay for and they would just run the movie for 24 hours after
Wow.
you paid for it.
Oh.
I remember I was young and watching this in the middle of the night, and I lived out in the country at the time. I refused to go out after dark for the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
Oh, God, I can't imagine.
And did you have do you have siblings?
No, I do not.
I was just going to say there's this prime, somebody could build stick people and just leave them around the house.
Oh God, that sounds like a
Yeah.
horrible sibling thing to do.
Oh, God, I'm so glad I did not watch this when my brother was around. Can you imagine?
Yes, I can. So, when did you first see it, Sarah?
Oh, gosh, I was, either 8th grade or a freshman in high school. I can't remember. It was around that time. So pretty early, but
Wow.
it had been out for a little while.
And not to mention, prior to the release of this, I remember how hyped I was because of all the marketing for this movie. Even when they played the Curse of the Blair Witch on Fox Channel,
Right.
the little mini documentary they made leading up to this, back when TV, like, I used to always watch those shows like Sightings and X-Files and all that stuff. So I was super in.
Right. Well, the writers and director both said that they had grown up with those documentaries from the 70s, which this is before cable had, any sort of huge penetration. So a lot of it was just syndicated stuff. And so it'd be like, I kind of grew up with the same stuff. Like there'd be documentaries on cattle mutilation,
Right.
or or spirits and things like that. And they said that it's just that whole they could be real. That's what they tried to recreate.
Right.
And so that using a big word here, verisimilitude.
Oh boy.
Of it, yeah, wow. Yeah. Of it was just, I mean, that's why, for me, it works. And I think for also the people that it works is, like, you do have sympathy for, the protagonists.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas,
Amber doesn't.
I have no sympathy for any of them.
Well, yeah, that's true, because, I mean, it's kind of curious because, seeing it again recently, because I had seen it once, in 1999, which was 20 years ago. But seeing it again recently, I was thinking that, I mean, I was more of a line that's like, well, if your kid's got a real job, then you wouldn't be out there. Worked for insurance, so, as I get older,
I guess my question is, like, did a lot of people think this was, like, real?
Yes.
Some people
they
did,
did.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a huge thing that people
Because,
thought it was a real
the
thing.
internet was really new, so you didn't have a lot of opportunities to research things.
Yeah.
And it was like what you're saying was prime time, like these documentaries of just like all the supernatural stuff that people were just eating up at the time. And it
Right.
came out like that perfect like timing with all of that.
It's like where we are with deep fakes now,
Yeah.
where people can be totally fooled because
Yeah.
it's not like nobody knows about it yet.
sure.
Well,
Right,
they
right.
even set up like a whole
They
website
did,
for
right.
this.
In
That
fact-
it's still up. I just looked at it yesterday at work.
Right. It's been there for, since the movie came out. And I mean, they're one of the first it's the first movie I can think of that actually had, website, faux websites to kind of back up the mythology that they built in the movie.
Right.
So that, if you wanted to kind of delve deeper in it, which is goes a lot to explain why people were fooled into thinking that this was a real thing.
Yeah.
Is that, well, if there's a website, there must be, because it's on the internet. Because back then, because back then in 1999, it's like, well, if it's the internet, it must be true because,
Takes a lot to get on the internet.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and I mean, it was because like I said, I looked at it yesterday, and it's a crabby little website, like you would expect from 1999. But like they tried hard. They put up photos. They put like audio files, which I couldn't even listen to on my computer at work. There was like a timeline.
Wow. They put a lot.
Yeah, like a timeline dating back to like 18, whatever, 40
Oh my
something.
God.
Right.
Yeah, like it was. They put work into that.
Huh.
Yeah.
What a fun project that would have been to work on.
Oh yeah.
So you guys remember the promotional stuff that came out beforehand?
Yep.
What was it about it that really got you into it? Was it that Fox thing? Like, what was it that you remember?
I definitely remember that was my first exposure to it, and that really hooked me because, again, I was the little weird kid. I love cryptids. Give me all the Bigfoot you got. And so I was all in at that point. But reading into the history of this movie, you just realize how smart the marketing was.
Yes.
Like, even at the film festival, they're putting out missing posters of the actors.
Right.
And it's just a movie in a time and place that just can't exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind that they were able to just make this, honestly.
It was really innovative
Yeah.
for the time.
Yeah, there are some comments in there that are like, wow, we do this all the time now. One of them was like, why you're filming everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kids' entire lives are on the internet now.
Yeah.
Right. But of course, the movie was made in 1999, but the missing footage, quote unquote, was filmed in 1994.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is the perfect time because before cell phones
Yeah.
became ubiquitous, or before any apps, because all you needed to have was like Find My Car app, and there would be
Yeah.
no movie.
Yeah.
So,
It'd be a very short movie.
yeah. But yeah, the marketing went a long way to getting people in the theaters. In fact, I think, unless something else has replaced it, when you compare how much it cost to how much it brought in, I think it's still the most profitable movie ever.
It made what? Like,
The figure I saw was $1 spent for every 10,931 made.
yeah.
Yeah,
crazy.
I think that's still the record. I mean, there are movies like, Pink Flamingos, which, were kind of near that, or John Carpenter's Halloween, but I think Blair Witch still kind of beats them all.
I would definitely believe it because, I mean, the crew had to have been tiny. Like, it was the actors doing the camera work, so...
Yeah, you had probably a sound person.
Maybe. Yeah.
It didn't sound like it.
I don't know. I think the sound design was pretty creepy.
The director's doing the props and...
Right.
I was going to say, I think that's why one of the guys actually got hired is because he had done sound work before and he had carried the equipment, and that's why they...
Like one of the
used him.
actors?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was either Mike or Josh. I can't remember. But one of them had experience using a boom mic, so... But, yeah, the latest IMDb figures for the Blair Witch Project are $140 million total. On anybody want to take a guess of the budget?
Well, we're talking about
Yeah.
60K.
60,000.
60,000.
Yep,
Gosh.
60,000 estimated.
Jeez.
That's crazy. But yeah, I kind of got into it. I didn't actually go to the website. Well, I had dial-up at the time, so it's like I didn't, who has time to...
Yeah.
Right.
I got other things to do on the internet.
Right.
Exactly. If I was going to spend that much time, there's probably a porn out there that I could have. Oh, okay. I said that out loud, but no. But I remember getting a whole bunch of buzz from the festival circuits saying that one of the scariest movies ever, and I kind of says, "Well, we'll just see," and yeah, and like I said, I converted. I was a convert, and the weird thing is if you really think about it. I mean, there is only one scene of blood in the whole movie when they unwrap the thing, and it's like, oh, that's teeth, and that's. But when you think about how much, I mean, there is. You have to go back to the 40s to find less blood in a horror classic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it relies very
True.
much on the Jaws thing of like you don't. It's your mind that makes it scary.
Yes.
You don't see the actual thing, and so it's whatever your head comes up with that's scary to you.
Yeah.
That's what makes it scary.
Right, but even Jaws had the
little.
kid getting eaten and the blood spurting and stuff like that, and it also had John Williams, which
Right. Yes.
you're right. Where these guys were just bare bones, but they used again like most people who make movies on a budget who are very good at it, they turn their disadvantages into advantages.
Right.
I mean, what I understand that there was no screenplay per se.
Right.
It's just they would write little notes to Josh. This is what you feel about Heather, and Heather, this is what you feel about Josh, and so here we go. We're turning on the camera, and
I think we read on the trivia that they actually did interviews specifically to get actors who are really good at improvisation. So it was
Yes.
like all improv. Like, how good are you at reacting to the situation we just tell you? Now, what's your first response?
Yeah, here's 8
Makes
days, now
sense.
go.
Yeah.
right. But even especially Heather. Because I mean, you get those scenes from the documentary that they're making.
Yeah.
The documentary within the my microphone. The documentary within the documentary, and I mean, just the fact that she does a great bit of acting where she goes into her documentary persona.
Her,
Oh, yeah.
her
I did.
reporter voice is so crazy.
Right.
I was like, oh, wow, she turned into an anchor person.
Yes.
I got a TV reporter right now.
She turned into the Dateline dude. What's his name? Stone Phillips. She turned into Stone Phillips. She's a female Stone Phillips.
So speaking of Heather, I don't like her
She
at
was-
all.
No.
She's miserable.
Yeah, and I think that was the point because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
follow up on that
I
later.
guess.
I was so mad because, like, here I am the first time ever seeing this movie, right? And it's a documentary of documentary, and she's like interviewing the people in town. Which, by the way, we learned also that the actors didn't know that this was a fake myth. They thought this was a real myth that this happened in this like area.
Oh,
and so when
okay.
they
I
went to
didn't
go
know that.
interview people in town, they didn't know that those were actors. Also, who were just giving like myth stuff that the directors had fed them.
That's interesting. I didn't
Feeding
do
them that fake information
Yeah,
that they're
that was
presenting
really
as real.
cool. That's what was really cool.
Yeah,
but what
that
was
is cool.
making me mad was like she would ask them a question, they'd start to talk, and then she would just like immediately ask him another question on
Right.
top of it. I'm like, let me hear what they have to say.
Yeah, and then like completely dismissing some of her
Yeah,
the people that are talking to her.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
and later says like I wasn't paying attention because I thought she was a lunatic.
yeah. Like, and that's
Are
what,
you here to document something, or what are you doing
Yeah,
here?
your whole point is to ask questions and get
Right.
these answers, and you're not even listening to the answers.
That's so crazy.
Because I was like, and I was getting so mad about her interview skills that I wasn't listening to what they were saying.
Right.
And so as we were like going through the woods and stuff, and like things, Brandon's like, hey, look, that thing's happened. I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah, they were saying something like they had planted something, like they had put something back in earlier in the film to explain sort of what was happening at the end.
Yeah.
I was like, I completely missed that because I was not paying attention.
Right.
Because she wasn't. I didn't care.
Yeah, I think when I first watched it, I missed it completely, just
Yeah.
like you're saying.
Yeah.
Only having watched it now, like I saw that setup. Yeah, if I didn't have that,
It also,
Then-
I think, takes a while to get used to the rhythm of how the dialogue works. Like, you expect things in a movie to go a certain way, but
Yeah.
this is a lot more free form, and it's,
Right.
I don't know, I guess proto-mumblecore or something. But, yeah, like, there were no subtitles on the disc, and
Yeah,
that
I couldn't
was
hear.
not great for me.
I was going to say, I was like, can somebody explain the myth to me? Because I really didn't pick up what the myth was.
Sarah, you want to help us out with that?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm the
One
one.
of you guys?
Do you want to?
Because I don't even understand what the witch, her deal was exactly.
There was something that happened in the 40s, and there was something that happened in the late 1800s, and I
I
didn't
feel
know
like
how
there
all
were
of it-
like two myths combined almost.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. They named like 3 different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was Ellie Kedward, who was the witch.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm going off the top of my head.
Sure,
I'm
that's
actually
fine.
coming in cold today, so
That's fine.
I have not watched this in a good couple of months, probably.
Yeah, but it's something. I mean, I'm trying to do it from memory. It's been a little bit longer. Well, probably have about the same amount of time. But something that she would, lure children into the forest because there's a lot of like that kind of explains the tiny little handprints that
In
you
that
kind of
house.
seen at the end. And basically, the kids start vanishing, which of course freaks out the town. But basically, yeah, what happens is she lures them in. The kids get lost, and then after a time, 3 days, according to the mythology of the movie, then they find, there's a house there, and it's like, oh no, but there's a witch, and
Okay.
horrible things
yeah.
happen.
And then it had some influence over like other persons, like Robert Parr. They mentioned.
Okay.
'Cause,
Oh,
like,
is that what it was?
Yeah,
I was
'cause-
trying to figure out how the two tied
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, because it was like she was causing him to murder these kids, and that's where they bring up the fact that I think they were talking about his testimony in court or something like that, but his testimony was saying like he would have one of the kids stand in the corner because he didn't like the eyes looking on him as he killed this other kid. So that kind of sets up this whole.
What
I think
happens
that
with
might have been specifically what
Josh,
they
yeah.
set up in what you were talking about,
Yeah.
Kristen. Which one bit of info I read was that in the pirated version they didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I think it was a deliberate means to confuse people who watched the pirated version, which
But still, like, even without having that information, I was like, he's just standing in the corner. That's pretty weird. Like, that's
Yeah, it's
kind of
pretty
creepy.
It's really
It's creepy enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think you had to have information planted to have that creep you
no.
out.
But it adds a nice layer to it if you were the person
Yeah.
who were following.
It does make
the
it more
lore.
cohesive as a narrative, yeah.
Mhm, for sure.
Well, and I know they even set up like alternate endings, although I can't remember what the others were.
I read about them. I haven't seen them.
I haven't in a long time. I know I've seen them before, but it's been probably a year or two.
Like
If I remember correctly, you can just skip those.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I mean, that's something they said was like the test audiences, I think, didn't like that original ending. So they filmed a couple more and then ended up using it anyway.
Huh.
I think one of them, don't they actually show the witch? And
I believe so.
yeah, it was just kind of like.
I don't remember that one. I just remember specifically one where they really invested some money, and I think you see Mike kind of floating in the air and glowing.
Oh,
and,
I remember
That's-
that one
that-
actually.
That'd probably take it out from the movie. Yeah.
yeah.
It was pretty bad.
that was enough for me, and I was like, you know what? No, that first ending, they nailed it. Let's stick with that
Right.
Yep.
I think there was one that involved someone being hanged, and there was
Oh,
another one
God.
that
Yeah.
involved the stickmen, like a bigger version of them or something.
Oh, right. One of them chasing them or something.
Yeah. So
would
I'm
be
glad
That was at least, I think they had, maybe that was written, and they probably didn't get to film that one because
I
that would
hope
have
they
been
stopped
special
there.
effects.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
This is Twig
Yeah,
Man.
Twig
Yeah.
Man just chasing them, like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man,
Sure.
just kind of showing up.
It's a big Gumby following you.
That'd be pretty creepy.
All right. We haven't even done the summary yet. The IMDb summary is 3 film students vanish after traveling into a Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend, leaving only their footage behind. And that's the movie.
That's
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
the
That's
movie.
pretty accurate. Yeah.
That's basically almost everything that happens.
So I thought it was interesting about when they were like walking, trying to get home and stuff, like the map stuff. I was trying to figure out, did that one guy actually take the map and get rid of it, or do you think he was under the influence of the witch?
I'm not sure because Mike had eventually admitted to kicking the map in the river.
Yeah.
But at that point, he was so frustrated and starting to get really loopy that I think he was comfortable enough to admit it and to do it in the first place.
Right, but I think the brilliance of the film is that they leave that ambiguous. It could be the influence of the witch. It could just be Mike just saying...
Being Mike.
Being Mike.
Yeah,
So,
Mike, he's an asshole.
Because that was the same time where everybody was starting to lose their minds.
Yeah, and he got fed up pretty early.
He did.
Yeah.
Like, he was very done. And he was just scared or frustrated? Both?
Probably both.
Probably both, yeah. Maybe more frustrated than, or at least I read him as being more frustrated than scared, maybe. But going back to the first title card where they just kind of set everything up. It's brilliant in the sense that it kind of sets up that sense of dread because you already know that these guys. You know how it ends.
The
you know
fate
how
structure.
Right. Because you know these kids aren't getting out. You know that they never found the kids because you know that going in.
You just don't know how.
So you don't know how, and so it just kind of as you're watching it, it's like. Okay, Heather, Josh, and Mike aren't getting out of this. So
were they even really friends? Like, I know they weren't really given script stuff, but I think they were just kids doing a project together.
That's what it sounded like.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a college project.
Because I don't think Heather knew Mike at all in the beginning.
No, it sounded like he came with Josh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I think maybe Heather and Josh were in the same college class together, and they were doing a group project, or maybe.
You get the feeling that they knew each other from something.
Well, and on their fake website, there are pictures of like Heather and Josh working together on past things.
Okay.
Well, I think they had tried to set up that, or at least the directors had it in mind that Josh and Heather would have been a couple in the past. And
I never thought that.
But they dropped a lot of that in the filming because they thought it would be a little too cliche. And
Right. That would have been. Their instincts were good in that movie. Really. Yeah. Because they've avoided like a whole romantic subplot thing.
Yeah, as much as all of those characters hated each other,
I'm glad they didn't go that route.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been.
It was. I can tell you, like, I don't like people yelling at each other, and so I was getting really, really anxious as like the tensions kept like getting higher, and like they just were like every shot was like, for a while was just them like. Being upset at each other and
Heather
yelling.
screamed for a long time.
And I was like, oh my God, this is making me feel so like...
was that worse than the scary stuff for you?
Almost. Like, it was like I would check out. Like, I would be like looking down or like not focusing because it was just... Like, I didn't feel compelled by their acting, like, at all. Like, it just felt like... Because like, like, how it is set up. Like, you're not really seeing any real character development. You're just seeing these people... in these brief shots being just angry at each other and then upset.
Early on, I felt that especially Mike was very good at his role.
Yeah.
Like just following them in the hotel room and walking around town, they seemed very it seemed very real. Like,
they were comfortable.
I knew these guys. You know, like I've seen these guys at work before kind of thing.
Right. Then you go into the woods and it's like...
Yeah, now we're all screaming at each other.
Please stop.
Well, and I can kind of understand that, though, because after 2 or 3 days lost in the woods, like, I'd be yelling at whoever I'm with, too, just because I'm scared.
You were supposed to be at work at 9. And where's the car?
Especially if that one
I'm
person
terrified.
was so insistent every step of the way.
Yeah.
And so then now thinking about it now, it's like, well, maybe that's what they wanted me to feel anxious and unsettled and upset.
Yeah.
Right, I'm sure. Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure
part of
that's
it.
exactly
That would contribute to it.
Because like that day where they walked 15 hours south and then just came back to the same log.
I would have been done.
Apparently that was real.
I would have sat my ass down and been done.
Yeah. I would have been crying.
Yeah.
I would have ate a leaf too.
Absolutely. I would have been in tears.
that shot did kill you. You just like pick up a leaf and just like, I'm like, I feel you, bro.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the things that I kind of sort of thought about last minute when I watched it. You see him eating that leaf, and it kind of brought up, why didn't they find any animals to eat throughout the whole thing?
Yeah.
They were starving. They're in the woods. Like, there have to be animals.
Yeah, they had a survival guide.
Unless the witch is scaring all the animals.
So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm kind
Yeah.
of getting at. Like, there's nothing for them
creepy.
to eat.
I got goosebumps.
That adds another layer to it because, again, you're right. There should be animals, but there aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do we hear birds at all?
I don't
No, I don't even know.
I don't think so.
I don't know
don't
if we
think
hear
so.
birds or airplanes.
I
or-
assume they would have had to put him in post anyway because with all
Yeah.
the people walking around and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tweet.
Sure.
Like, that's my bird reel that I always do whenever I hear fake bird.
Excellent.
Tweet. Yeah, I don't. I remember hearing the snaps out. When was it the first night they heard the noise in the woods?
Yes.
Okay. I think
so, yeah.
And I was like, it's just a deer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then they said, oh, it's just a deer. I was like, yeah, it's just a deer. Go back to sleep. And my question is if they could have slept through the night. Like I wonder if he would have been physically hurt. Like, this is me trying to expand on the lore. Like, if I could just knock myself out and just sleep through the whole night, would the witch still get me?
I don't know.
Do I have to be conscious?
Josh at one point just
I
disappeared.
was gonna say like he
Right.
disappeared in the middle of the night. So,
So she just
Maybe she just stole him asleep. I don't know.
yeah.
Could be.
It's one of those
Yeah,
things where they don't
exactly.
give you the information, and that's what makes it
Like
Yeah,
it could be
yeah, make
anything.
it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, make it up like we're doing right now. Exactly. Yeah.
creepy.
Speaking of the first night of camp, I have to ask recent viewers, was this where the Gilligan's Island song was, where Heather sings that?
I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
early.
think so. Because
I didn't know that, but
They
I
weren't
think
in
so.
terrible spirits yet. So.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is, the filmmakers even say on the commentary that this is one of the most expensive couple of seconds in the film because they had to pay for the rights to Gilligan's Island to put it into the film.
Wow.
Wow.
great job, Heather.
Yeah, but that's an expensive license.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Because, I remember them saying, you're the captain. And like, well, if you were TV literate, you would know that Skipper.
It's the skipper.
Yeah. So I think it was the first night. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
They mentioned Deliverance, but then again, titles aren't protected by copyright law.
Did they play a little bit of the music though on their
I
mouth?
think so.
I don't think so. I don't think they.
But it
did
wouldn't. Okay.
No,
the
they could only
banjos, no.
That's-
do Gilligan, not Gilligan and Deliverance.
Gotcha.
Yeah, only had the budget for the one. That is one thing that I really appreciate about this movie and any movie that does it is when there is no music.
Mm-hmm.
Like No Country for Old Men does it really well, and I just rewatched The China Syndrome, which there's not a drop of music in that whole thing, and that is one of the most tense movies I've ever seen.
Yes. No music.
No
No
music.
musical cues. It just
Nope.
makes you alone with the actors,
yeah.
which is
Alone in your own head.
Yep.
And then there's quote-unquote music over the credits, I guess, but it's
yeah.
mostly just noises, I think.
And it's is it the second night's when the tent is touched, right?
I think it's
Yeah.
like the third night. It was
Yeah.
later than I thought it would.
Because I think
be.
the second night is when they come out and they see the rocks.
Yeah,
Because it was right after they had gone to Coffin Rock.
and they hear more snapping that's just louder, and I think
All around.
Yeah, all around
Yeah.
them this time.
Yeah.
That's really creepy.
Screw
Yep.
that. Absolutely not.
She's snoped out already.
I heard it was the directors out there snapping twigs themselves,
Throwing them.
throwing them in random directions. I don't know if I could have done this movie. Like,
I was
as
going to say, like, props to the cast, because even though you know you're acting, like,
Yeah.
that's still scary.
But apparently you're also not because people are playing with you.
Right.
Like, apparently Heather showed up and was like, "Are y'all making a snuff film? Like, honestly?
yeah.
Come on.
Am I gonna die at the end of
And
this?"
then you also think the myth is real too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I read that they stayed in character for like 8 days of shooting.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Oh, their safe word was taco.
I love that they had a safe word though. That's nice.
That was good.
Well, apparently Heather, the real life Heather is out of the business. It's she had a biography that she wrote recently where, she kind of got sick of being recognized all the time and she just dropped out.
Huh.
Apparently she's like an early adopter of, the cannabis business, thinking
Oh.
that.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Because that probably was rough for her because I'm sure she was not liked by
Yeah.
Yeah.
fans of the film.
I mean, she got
Yeah.
those other guys killed.
I mean, she's practically the antagonist.
Yes.
Right. And a lot of people thinking that it's real,
Right.
yeah.
Everything's her fault.
That part where she does her like I'm sorry to the moms stuff was
Right.
actually kind of I still did not like her, but I was like, okay, this is kind of a little like a nice thing that she's trying to do. Like, this is my fault. Like, we hadn't done this project, if I had listened, blah blah blah. But yeah,
It was like the first time she showed any redeeming qualities, really.
right.
It wasn't just this, I know everything and everything's fine and
Right.
I'm in control.
I know I fucked up and
Yes.
I'm sorry.
First time she showed any amount of self-awareness.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't know. I feel like that was a good moment to show she finally had broken and was vulnerable. Like the whole time,
Yeah.
she acted like I would, where it's just, you know,
Puts up this mask.
you just hold it together. Everybody's breaking. Please, just one more mile and we're going to find it. And then at that point, she just couldn't do it no more.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense because what are you going to do? Like, literally, all you have to do is keep going.
And especially if everyone around you is breaking, I guess somebody's got to hold
Yeah,
it
sure.
together.
Well, and this is after Josh is missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also after she found the packet of goodies,
Right.
the present.
Yeah.
The bloody little. Yeah.
Which, what was that supposed to be? I couldn't make out what it was supposed to be.
I remember
noticed the
looking
tongue
at,
first.
Yeah, the tongue,
Okay,
and
the
then
tongue.
there's
Wasn't
some
there a
teeth.
finger?
Teeth and hair.
Teeth and
Teeth
hair.
Oh, yeah, I saw the hair. Okay.
Yeah, see, like it was hard to recognize. You definitely recognize the tooth, but I only really know tooth, hair, and tongue from someone's trivia on IMDb.
Yeah, I just kind of guessed at tongue
Yeah.
based on the shape, and then I was like, is that part of a jaw? Holy crap!
Yeah, weird.
See, and I saw something that looked like a finger, but that may have just been
I mean,
what
it
I was
was
seeing.
It was real red in there. It could have been anything.
Yeah.
And yet another reason why it's so effective. It was just this old grainy film stock
Yeah.
style where you just get a brief glimpse and it's like it could
Right.
be anything. It's just
Yeah.
red and
I
squishy.
do love it
and
aesthetically
yuck.
for that
Yeah.
reason.
Right. Like you, as a first-person viewer, you probably wouldn't spend too much time looking at it. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely.
the fact that you can't really tell what it is, or you couldn't really see, or you were mostly guessing, like
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I hope it is. I mean, if it was the tongue, it makes sense for what happens when they hear Josh. Because that's
Yeah.
pretty freaky.
Yeah.
Yep.
It reminded me in, has anybody seen Annihilation?
Oh yeah, I have.
Okay, and the part where, like, the bear has the
Oh.
voice of the woman.
Yes. Oh,
And
that
it's
is
like
spooky stuff.
So spooky. I was getting those same feels like, oh no, 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 no. Somebody is using Josh's voice to lure them.
And don't they? I read that they kind of say that at one point. Like, what if she's just playing with us? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
I
One of
didn't
them says
actually
that somewhere.
catch that. It might have been one of the times where I was tuning out because everything was shaking and
Yeah.
dark. I don't know.
And there was a lot of screaming about Josh. Creepy. Ugh.
I don't really know that there is a way to go through this linearly.
No, because it's like 90 minutes of screaming at each other in the woods, and then the rest, or not 90 minutes, 90%, and then the last 10% in the
Right.
Yeah.
post Josh missing.
Quote unquote set pieces, I guess, where you have to see the little piles of rocks everywhere before they appear outside the tent.
Right.
Yeah.
And you find the stick people,
Yeah.
and you hear children out in the woods.
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing the kids
Yeah,
laugh.
I didn't either.
Crying or laughing?
I think it was crying.
I mean, I don't know
I'm
why
not-
they would be laughing.
I can't remember. But I do recognize that they were children's voices. It was just really hard to hear a lot of the off-camera sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like
Which-
even with Josh, it was hard to like.
Really understand.
Yeah.
You know, I even tried to go through this like as a day by day like plot listing, and by the end of it, I still had to Google how many days they were actually lost in the woods because
Yeah.
How many
it's
was it?
just 8.
Okay.
They were in the woods for 8 days.
Holy shit.
Wait, did we actually see 8 days or
I think so.
but just like captured randomly?
Yeah.
I thought it was only 3.
I think
No,
that was
it was
their
a lot
plan.
More than 3, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what makes it so scary to me too, is because you kind of lose track.
You lose sense of
Like,
time.
I don't know how long I'm out here.
Right.
What
I
day of the
can't-
week is it?
Yeah.
Which, if we go into the continuity of the new movies, I guess that kind of the time manipulation.
God, the new movies.
Oh, there's
There were, I feel like, a lot of these, weren't there?
There's
So there was
two,
a Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows.
which was god awful and horrendous.
Right, and they actually remade. They just called it the Blair Witch. So the Blair Witch Project that came out pretty recently. Like I want
Yeah.
to say it's like 2 or 3 years.
And that one's not terrible. That like has Heather's brother going in trying to basically find her because he thinks she's still lost out there.
Is that like a modern day?
Yeah, it's a modern day take on the same
Like
kind of
they
style.
have to get their phones wet or something so that you.
They do use drones. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I forgot they did use a drone. I've only seen it once, and it was probably last year, year
yeah,
before.
it's been a minute.
Book of Shadows was very different and very bad and very, very early 2000s.
And totally different style.
Totally different style,
just
not
said-
found footage.
Huh.
They kind of said screw the
That's the
story pretty much. And
Whole hallmark of the film.
I bet you it
Yeah,
was different
it's-
directors.
it was
Not the
very
story,
bad.
It's how the story's presented. That
Yeah.
wow.
Well, my only theory can be is they said, look at these guys with $60,000. They made this much money. What if the studios got behind with our big checkbook and we're just going to tweak a few things? And
We'll throw special effects at him. And
it was terrible.
it was Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Electric Boogaloo. Caught in a thunderstorm this time.
Yeah, I remember, seeing the advertisement for Blair Witch 2, and I'm thinking, well, if somebody sees it that I respect, says that it's really good, I'll see it. And nobody ever did.
It's bad.
I never
first?
got a recommendation, so
Wow.
I never.
And despite knowing that it's bad, because I saw it years and years ago, back when you could still rent movies from a Blockbuster, and I remember knowing it was bad then, and we still went out of our way to find it last year, just so we could have it as
Yeah.
part of our collection, and you can't find it. It's very difficult to even find.
DVD's a Wing Commander, $40. I looked.
Oh my
It's a
god.
DVD.
I want one.
Not even the
and
not even the
I
Blu-ray.
think the Blu-ray was more.
Wow.
Jeez.
I'm on the hunt now, you guys.
I'll keep my eyes open.
Please do. The dumber the movie, the more I love it. That's why I'm worried about Ravenous.
Oh, don't worry.
Okay, great.
I love it too.
Yeah,
so.
I think all the girls have very strong feelings about that movie.
I just haven't showed my strong feelings yet.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the next episode.
All right.
We were talking about this episode.
I'd love if the disc had subtitles. Perpetuating the myth that women can't maps.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We want to talk about the protagonist as a woman. How are we feeling about the female representation?
I mean, she's the strongest character,
she's the strongest
but
character.
she's also awful.
She's also an asshole. Yeah.
So I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm very torn.
I think it would not. Honestly, I don't think they could have had a different character,
Right.
another woman character. That they could have had a dude that would have been fine.
See, I was trying to think about that, and I don't, especially a white dude. I don't think that,
It would have
It
worked
would've
as
worked
well.
as well.
Well, yeah, right.
because one of my other notes was this is white foolishness. Like, there's no way that a
Right.
black woman would do
Yeah, true. Like I ain't going to the. You can't.
always vote with black women, and I guess listen to them at all other times also. I don't know.
Yeah,
I definitely think they cast it how it needed to be.
Yeah, because I think if it was a sympathetic character at the beginning, I wouldn't have had the same vitriol responses. I would have been more. I don't even think it's more because a more empathetic person wouldn't even be in that situation. I don't think necessarily. I can't see a different character really
Yeah.
being in her role.
Right.
Or at least causing the drama that the movie needed to cause.
Yeah.
Right.
Because she was the person running the student project.
She was instigating all of it.
Yeah, we probably all had a project where someone was the main
Puppet master.
yeah, where someone who's very controlling and demanding of all the other
Right.
people in the group.
Like, they want to do the whole project. And,
Yes, it's their
and,
vision
and get their A.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, right. Well,
like-
it was her project. I
Right,
mean,
you
she-
keep your
she's-
fingers out of it, so yeah, so we get a good grade kind of thing.
And she was the director on top of it, so
Right,
double whammy.
right.
Right, but it does go to the independent nature of the film, in that if this was maybe a Hollywood film, and the $6 million would have been spent instead of $60,000, then they would have had a more sympathetic character, or she would have been bad, but kind of in a Hollywood way, where it's well, she has a heart of gold underneath all that bluster or
Yeah.
whatever. Where they would have, if it was Hollywoodized, then it would have. Of course, been worse, but the character felt very real to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, and not portrayed, as in any sort of chauvinistic way. I mean, she was a real person, because again, we've all mentioned that we know people like this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's say she's maybe a sweeter character, and she's maybe catching flies with honey kind of thing, leading by charm rather than pushing and pushing and pushing. How would we have felt about the character at that point?
I don't think she would have been a good leader.
If we really love her,
Yeah.
And that's why we're following her.
Then we would want her to win out in the end, like all the other
Yeah.
horror movies. Because horror movies are all
Right.
about terrible people dying by the monster.
Right.
If you have someone who's
And there's
like,
always a final girl, so, you know, she's
Yeah.
gonna live.
yeah, and she's the one that is usually the best character of the bunch or
Right.
has some positive qualities.
Right.
Therefore, she must survive.
Yeah, I think I would have wanted her to live.
That's interesting, yeah.
I did not want her to live right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as I was watching this, I was like, well, and even just because I knew, well, first
Right.
off, but I was like,
Right.
oh, good. All right, fine.
This checks out.
This
yeah.
checks
Yeah,
out.
Because it's a very subdued slasher movie. You just don't see the slashing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Again, going back to, basically, not seeing any sort of horrific, and I mean, you don't really see you do see horrific images, but you don't really see violent images at all.
And it's surprisingly effective.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Because it's just stuff you could see out in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
I mean, again,
These
we spent
twig
so much
people-
time at the cabin
Yep.
growing up. Like, that could have happened to us.
little
you would
piles of
think.
rocks.
Right. Right. But trying to duplicate the effect, I mean, there have been other, ever since, Blair Witch came out, there are others, movies that tried to duplicate it, but you just can't. I mean, it's just kind of a once in a generation type of thing where, I mean, there was a lot of talent involved, clearly, but the fact that, a lot of combinations, there's a combination of things which I think explain why the movie was so successful. It's the improvisational nature of the acting, the realisticness, of the whole production, but still going, they were one of the first films to actually create a myth through other media, the internet, and the fake documentaries that were on Fox Television, and so but trying to duplicate that, I don't think you can. I mean, I'm hard pressed to think of
Yeah.
another film that actually did as well of a job of kind of
The meta.
world building.
Yeah.
Because you're building a world. Well, you're building a myth. but-
Yeah.
You probably couldn't have done this with social media because, I
Well,
mean,
No.
first of all, like we were talking about the internet, you can look everything up.
Yeah. I can think about, like, there's been some social media things that I've, like, followed along with. There's this thing going on with Adam Ellis's Dear David story. It's this internet comic artist who, like, started telling, like, these little stories about, like, his weird paranormal experiences through Twitter, and he's presented it as it's really real. Like, this is a thing that's happened to me. This character showed up in my dream.
Yeah, I've seen
I
those.
drew it. This stuff is happening. And then he would also send out videos showing, like I'm away for the weekend. Let's see what happens. And, like, things
Here's
will
my
happen.
cat staring at the door for no reason.
For no reason, for
Yeah.
hours, and then something falls off. And that's really cool. Like, I love seeing horror being used in social media
Yeah.
this way. But he's presenting it as it's something real happening to him. And then all of a sudden we get this, I've got a deal that I'm making this into a story. And we're like, oh, this is a story you're making up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
That's a really good point.
yeah.
I was just going to say, that's a really good point because the reason Blair Witch works so well is because it's like home video, and that's the format that worked.
Yeah.
Our
Right.
format for your story is existing on
It's
social
the thing
media.
that everyone
Right.
has.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you were to take that and move it
And
onto a
just-
screen,
yeah, it
you're now
changes.
moving the format to something
Right.
that is
Gotcha.
less believable.
Because, like, it would be like, I would literally be like, has he posted anything recently? And I would check his Twitter, like, every 3
Like
days.
it's part of your world.
Yes, I'm like trying to see, is anything new happening with David? And I saw that you take pictures, and it's like maybe there's something here,
Yeah.
and like people will be like, oh, let's enhance and zoom and polarize and invert and try and figure out if there's a face staring in your window, and it's really cool. I love that meta world building, like you said, like Blair Witch did. It's really cool to see it in social media, but I agree, if it's taken from that form
Its
and then
native format,
put into the screen, you kind of lose that.
the viscerality.
Authenticity that
Sure,
you
yeah.
need. Because at that time with Blair Witch, enough people believed it to add that extra flavor to it.
Right, like even
Right.
if logically you were like, there's no way this is real, there's still probably enough of the world going, yeah, but
Could be.
Maybe.
Could be. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting point. Going off of social media, would enough? I mean, if this were to be somehow, instead of being made in 1999, being made in 2019, would social media kind of kill that world building? I mean, would there be enough people on social media and saying, no, this is bullshit, or whatever? I mean, would it make $140 million?
No.
Well, and I think the thing with Blair Witch, especially, like, it was one of the first found footage films that actually became popular. So a lot of people had never seen anything like that before. And I think that's what made it so believable to everyone.
That found footage.
Sure.
Right. I mean, the only other found footage I can think of prior to Blair Witch was Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
And or Quarantine, actually, I think predates.
Quarantine, yeah.
Yeah, predates Blair Witch by about 1 or 2 years. But again, there was really the reason it didn't take off is, in the case of Cannibal Holocaust, it was pre-internet, so you didn't really have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
And the filmmakers really didn't have that interest. It's like, hey, let's make a movie about cannibalism, and
Yeah.
and it's like, hey, she's naked, and that's pretty much what they were going for there for Cannibal Holocaust.
And being a foreign film doesn't help.
Well, yeah,
At least
Also
here.
true.
Yeah.
Isn't the Quarantine's version American called Rec or Record or something?
Yes,
Rec.
REC.
I've heard that's pretty
Right.
good.
The Quarantine's really good. I don't know about REC or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I've actually I haven't seen either. I've seen Cannibal
Rec's pretty
Holocaust.
good.
Rec is very good.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. One of the best zombie movies I could probably say, and found footage.
It was actually one of my birthday presents for Will this year, is the collection of them.
Oh, nice.
So still working our way through what we have to get through up to Rec 4. So.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I really love. I'm not sure if you said that there's stuff that predates the found footage thing, but I got really into paranormal activity for a little bit, just because it was one of those what's really creepy is it's in your house, and what's going on when you're not paying attention to what's around you. And I'm terrified of that. And I'm like, I need to stop cameras everywhere. But no, do I really want to? Because I really don't want to know at the same time.
Right.
See, that's I think why I like found footage so much, though, is because it feels so real.
Yes.
Well,
There's a very real audience surrogate.
Yes.
It's first person. It could be you. Mm-hmm. It is you.
and to tie into the Blair Witch with Paranormal Activity, because I love that as well. And I think it's just maybe it's just my age where I'm getting older now, and I love that old grain that you would see on VHS tapes and whatnot like that. And I think that's why found footage nowadays is not quite as real, because I mean, we can take lifelike quality images on our phone, but when I see an old video of VHS style,
there's
that
only
just
one
does
of it.
it
It's
for
not
me.
coming out of the cloud.
Right.
Well, and also, especially with newer found footage movies where they still refuse to move the frames up to 60 frames per second. And you see that movie image or movie refresh or the 24 frames per second where it's movie-like. It's not lifelike. I'm still waiting for a found footage movie to make that lifelike movement.
Yeah.
I think that would actually help a lot, because even on our phones now, we're not filming in 24. With the Blair Witch, that was plausible, especially when they pulled out. I don't know much about cameras. Did the 16 millimeter camera they have, was that a widescreen camera?
Oh, I don't even know. To be
I
honest.
don't know enough.
Because this
about
time I
it.
was watching, I noticed that they kept the 4:3 the ratio for the VHS, and even though they switched to the 16, they didn't bump it out to the full. They kept it in 4:3 just so you wouldn't be going back and forth all the time. And I think that also helped, because it made that really nice camera slim down to the limitations of the home video camera.
Yeah.
I think that also helped. But that's a really good point about the frames. That would be really curious to see a new modern, because it would definitely stand out in a movie theater.
Brains receive those frames in a certain way.
Yeah.
We know what movies look like,
Right.
and we know what motion smoothing looks like, and it's awful.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember I walked into somebody's house and Hook was playing on their screen, and it was that newer, higher frame rate, and I was like,
I hate it.
"Oh God,
I hate it.
this is very strange to see Hook. Doesn't look right. This looks
Oh, you
fake."
mean TV smoothing?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask about The Hobbit, because I know that was double the frames, and if that looked weird or not.
It looked very weird, because they didn't go with one or the other. It was just suddenly we're going to bump up the frames and it looks uncanny, and then we're going to go back to movie.
Weird.
Well, even going back to, I don't know if this story is apocryphal, but going back to, into the 1890s when, films started when people started like 1 or 2 minute little movies. And, there was a movie about a train coming into the station, and the apocryphal story maybe is that people thought it was real.
Yeah.
And so they were ducking, and it's like, holy crap, there's a train coming.
Right.
Because they've never seen a motion picture before.
Yeah.
So, it's just our minds adjust to whatever the technology
Yeah.
is.
Right.
True, very
time,
true.
So.
It's like when you go back and play like an old video game, you're like, I remember as a kid this looked beautiful. This looks like garbage.
Yeah, you can't play GoldenEye anymore.
Yeah, no. I wanted to bring up one movie as a recommendation because I know not a lot of people probably have seen it. It's called Lake Mungo. Has anybody seen it?
I'm not familiar. No.
So it's an Australian movie, and it was at a film festival, so it was never like a big anything. But it's along the same lines as like found footage, documentary kind of stuff about this girl who goes, who drowns while she's swimming, but then there's like all this paranormal stuff that's happening around it. And and it's really interesting. It does like those whole like the brothers trying to like, put stuff up, cameras up, and he's recording stuff, and it's like that kind of thing. And I was getting a lot of the feels from Blair Witch as I was watching it as for Lake Mungo, because it's just like, I really like movies where it's like you have to pay attention to what's going on. If you're like, there could be stuff that's like you're not paying attention because like the other characters are interacting, but maybe there's like something happening in the background that you're not seeing. And Lake Mungo is a lot like that. It's really good.
And
I
it's
made a
more
note
of
of that to look for.
Yeah. And it's more of a professional documentary where they actually, after the fact, will have people like sit down and they'll interview them.
Yes.
That kind of
So
format.
it's documentary plus found footage.
Rather than Blair Witch of like, I'm a person who's going to shove a camera in your face and interview that way.
Yeah.
And then not let you speak.
Yeah. Yes.
I remember being surprised that the giant claw necklace didn't do anything because that was such a visible part of
on Josh.
Josh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like,
I thought maybe it would have been used to wrap up the little packet
right,
of
it would have
Josh.
at least been a charm hanging on that thing.
Yeah.
Little packet of Josh.
Chekhov's claw.
Sounds like a
Didn't go off.
70s album.
No, it didn't.
Little packet of Josh.
I'm glad that packet was tied with his clothes. That added a lot to it.
Yeah. So I can't remember. Did the movie talk at all about like what the bundle of sticks meant? Because when I was looking at the fake website, like that's actually part of the mythology, I guess. And I didn't know that until I looked
remember.
that up. But apparently, Ellie Kedward at one point lured a kid into the river or something, and they just saw her go down. I don't know. You look like you know.
And no, I know what you're referring to, but I can't speak to what.
Gotcha.
I can't remember. And now that you say that, I do remember it involving something.
But I guess later they saw these like oily bundles of sticks coming up from the water, and I had no idea that had anything to do with anything really, other than just being creepy.
They did at
Yeah.
one point say that, what was it, Josh's stuff was all covered in goo or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that supposed to be like ectoplasm or something?
Probably.
No idea.
Well, let's hope it's ectoplasm because
Oh, yep. Trivia. It was KY jelly.
That makes sense. I kind of wondered.
Because he was the one that knocked the rocks over, so he
Right.
would be targeted.
Josh was?
that which is a
Is that why he
freak.
disappeared?
Yeah.
KY jelly.
Or we're assuming that's what it is.
Right.
Because they made a big deal about him being targeted specifically and like why him.
And it makes sense.
Heather bent down and like tried to put the rocks back and she kissed one of
Yeah.
them.
This one.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, she was invested for sure. My final note here is I'm glad that it cut off when it did, because despite all of how I felt about it, I think seeing the thing would have been way too much for me.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it would
At
have
that
taken
point-
away from it.
I think it
Definitely.
would have, because it's. I mean, that's almost like a radio movie when you kind of think about it, because so much is.
Right. It's all in your head.
It's all in
Yeah.
your head, and and what's in your head is, a lot of times it's going to be many, many times more horrific than what can be
Exactly.
shown, especially on a $60,000 budget.
Right. I think that's the real brilliance of the movie is that you never see any of the bad things
Yes.
happening. They just happen.
And that's where so many other movies fail, is because they feel like the audience just has to see what they're
Yeah.
conjuring up, and then when you see
Right.
it, it's just such a disappointment.
Yeah.
Where it's, if you had just left me with what I think is there,
Yep.
that would have been so
Exactly.
much more
Right.
effective.
Right.
Kind of like you were talking about earlier with jump scares.
Yes.
Like this movie didn't need it.
No, absolutely not. And I hate jump scares so much. It's such
Sure.
a cheap way to
Yeah.
get that fear. And I know it's usually followed by music leads you up to it. But like I just was like, thank God there was no jump scares in this movie. I
Well,
hate it.
usually it's cats that create the jump scare.
frequently.
I was getting conflicting information from the trivia on IMDb, and this is probably just the internet being the internet, where not everything you read is true. They mentioned in one trivia that the scene where one of the nights Heather went out and she was screaming like, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?"
Right.
And the trivia was that the cameraman was supposed to pan a little bit to the left, and you would see the witch. But then in another trivia, it said like the person they were supposed to see was wearing or the person that Heather saw was wearing a ski mask. So
I think it was that they were wearing white, but then the ski mask so that the head wouldn't show. That's kind of what I got at, because I saw the ski mask thing too.
Okay, because
They
I was
also
going to
did specify that they were wearing white.
because I was worried that if it was a ski mask, it would definitely ruin that
Yeah.
the reveal of the witch.
And
So I'm
if-
kind of glad they just didn't
Yeah.
reshoot that anyway.
Right.
'Cause
Yeah.
I think it would have ruined it for me.
Definitely.
Right.
Honestly.
And then they wouldn't have the fan theories about Josh and Mike wanting to murder
Yes.
Heather,
Sure.
because then you would see that there actually is something out there.
Right.
Right.
Rather than these two people fucking with this third. Which, like, I got to that point on the trivia page and was like, how is this so long? Like, it
Yeah.
I know.
was so, I don't know how far I get.
it
Like,
was
maybe
longer than the movie.
Kinda, yeah.
Well, I just can't imagine going into something like this, not having a script and not really knowing what I'm getting into.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's not for me.
I just can't fathom.
Not for me.
I think that's what I appreciate most about the movie. And this is probably something I would have said later, or would say later when we wrap up, is how much I appreciated hearing about how it was made.
Yes.
And how much it made me actually appreciate the movie, because I like how much was the director putting the pieces in motion and just letting people do their thing. And I think that definitely shows.
Well, because what I think Will told me, like, the directors would just give them like notes, and
Yeah, they were legit camping for 8 days.
they wouldn't know what the
and
other
they
person knew. They would just be going into it. Like, that's horrifying.
And I also heard that they were like deliberately giving them less food each day.
Yes.
Which is like
Horrible.
what? I mean, I've heard all sorts of horrible things directors do.
Well, it's
for
like a LARP
actors.
that's gone horribly wrong when you think about it. It's like, well, your character knows this, but this character is, or whatever.
Anything else you guys are thinking about?
I just wanted to give one big shout out before we wrap up here to the sound design, because I think there were a lot of smart decisions made, especially with the 2-camera system that they had, where you had the handheld that recorded sound, and then you had the actual film camera that needed the mic on its own. And really, it's really subtle. I've missed it for a long time, but if you go into that final scene where Heather's in the house, and Mike at this point's been captured, he's in the basement, it feels weird.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
And it's because Mike's recording and the sound is picking up Heather that is further away as she's approaching.
Right.
And as she gets closer, you can hear it increasing in
Yeah.
volume.
So I'm already getting goosebumps again. Look at this. Because I remember going, where is everybody in this house? I couldn't figure out. It was so
Right.
disorienting. I was like, where is Heather right now? And where is Mike? And I couldn't figure out. Because you could hear people yelling, but where the heck are they coming?
Yeah, because you're getting the camera that first person camera perspective, but Heather sounds far away because the mic's picking it up from further away. And I just thought that was such a
Yeah,
nice
that's neat.
little
Yeah.
touch.
I hadn't
of
really thought
smart
about
making.
it. That is really.
Weird.
Bob, I'd like to kind of bring up the point that at least for me, I still had sympathy for the characters, even though Heather, is an asshole.
Yeah.
But you still have sympathy. Yeah.
I don't want anybody to die.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think,
Especially not like that.
but I think what goes to that is that there's really no, a visible contrivance in the movie. I mean, it feels real.
Yeah.
Whereas if they try to Hollywood, try to make it Hollywood and stuff, and try to make,
Right.
the characters more fit. It's like, oh, there's a triangle going or whatever. Then I think I would have want them all to die horribly because I would have seen the contrivance.
Right,
But the fact that there
exactly.
is no contrivance
Exactly.
makes it feel that, you want these guys, even though you know from the beginning that they're not going to get out of it. But again, you still have sympathy for them, or at least I do. So.
I'm just a terrible person. Well, I think also it helps that 20 years later, I know this is just a fake movie.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I know it. If I had watched this when
Right.
I was younger, I probably would have felt differently. Like, oh oh
Yeah.
crap, this is
Yeah.
a real thing happening.
Like, I make mistakes sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
And I can kind of understand her just being headstrong. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, you know, she comes across as an asshole, but I don't
She's-
think she's intending to be. I think
No.
she's just very.
I mean, if you really want to think about it, like, she is a woman in the film industry.
she's
Yeah.
got to be a
Like,
little tough.
She probably
Yeah.
has to be.
Yeah.
That's probably maybe where it came from. So
So I give her some
Yeah.
leeway for that. Like,
the real enemy is the patriarchy.
Oh, the patriarchy.
Made her into who
again.
she is.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was just the final sequence and how much I love this whole sequence of we spent so much time in the woods and the transition where they just were walking slowly through the woods and now they're running into this house and you just get this onslaught of all the like cryptic stuff. You see like the bloody baby hands, you see the runes carved into the walls, you see this like messed up
Yeah.
dilapidated house. It is all just kind of thrown in your face at the last second when you've been in this slow crawl up to this point.
yeah.
And it's a creepy house and you're seeing these people just run through it like at full speed. And I think that's what
At
also
which point I'm like, oh, hell no.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
there's
No.
not a chance that I'd
No.
walk into that
No.
house even if one of my friends
Like,
was in there. Like,
Definitely not at night.
no,
for sure.
absolutely
Like,
not.
maybe during the day.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the final scene or the final bit so creepy is that you just watch this guy run full speed through the house and suddenly, immediately, he's now standing still in this corner. It's like,
Yep.
what supernatural force took that person who was frantic
Yep.
and just froze him in
What
the corner
happened
like
to
that?
him?
That was like a really cool
Is that
touch.
the thing?
Yeah.
What's the thing?
I mean, I think the thing for me, or at least the thing I remember when I think back when I watched the movie, was probably the tent shaking. Because it was the first like physical interaction they had with whatever was going on in the woods. Like hearing things, yeah, that's creepy. Seeing, you know, piles of rocks, that's creepy. But there is some agent that is shaking
Right.
this tent. And you never see that agent. And I think that was probably the thing for
So that's
me.
maybe the point where the movie switches from psychological to magical.
Yeah, there's something real going on. It's
Right.
not just their imagination.
Right.
All I know is when I watched this movie, when it got to the part where she's facing the camera and doing that, I was like, oh, hey, I know this. I've seen this before
Yeah.
because promotional materials.
That's
and,
Right.
exactly what I think the thing would be for me because I hadn't seen it before.
yeah.
That was all I knew about this movie.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, look, there it
Right.
is.
Was found footage and this girl.
And then my next thing was, I wonder how many people have Blair Witch tattoos.
Oh,
I'm sure it's a pretty popular thing.
Well, you know, let me get up and no,
You guys know.
yeah, no, I would not. But that,
The what?
The guy that was in line in front of us at Horror Hound had one on his leg. That's why they were talking about.
We were there last weekend. We were at this horror movie festival. And
yeah.
There
Yeah.
it is.
Yep. But the thing for me too would be Heather's monologue, and then the fact that and I don't know why I fixated on it, but it's like she had snot, just
Yes.
right there,
Oh, yeah.
like right there, and it's like, honey, blow your, you know, and it's like you should have packed some tissues or something, and
Use your sweater.
use a sweater or something. You got a little right there, and just for me, I was kind of, I mean, I'm trying to listen to the monologue, but it's like that's kind of distracting. So, just saying.
see, I think the thing for me is the ending because it's not really scary, but it's still terrifying. Like you
It's
don't.
not really scary.
It's not scary, but it's horrifying. Like, dude is just standing there. How do you make a guy just standing there scary?
That's very unsettling.
They made it,
Yes.
and that's what I remember every time I go back to watch this movie.
Yeah, I think now that I've seen it, I think the ending
is the
thing.
visual of him standing facing the wall.
Right, but you had to have all that build up to make that scary.
Yeah.
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 It's the most 90s thing about this movie.
No cell phones.
No cell
I guess.
phones.
Yeah, no cell phone.
No cell phones.
Probably
They're-
the product packaging in the stores.
Yeah.
Just like old fonts and stuff like that.
The actor's style is very like 90s grunge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were really grunged out, but again, you know, they were filming in quote unquote 1994. So
Right.
I would've-
What were they listening to in the car?
oh,
Oh, gosh. It was in the trivia. Pretty
Oh.
I
sure.
don't know.
Yeah, they
I
said
saw it in
something
the
that like
credits.
something
initially
they didn't have to license, I guess.
That's the thing, like something they had played initially they couldn't use because they couldn't get the licensing to that. So I
Maybe it's like library music or something. You know, something very generic.
It was listed in the very short credits, but I forgot. It was a band I didn't recognize.
Yeah, maybe
That's
a
something I
band,
didn't even think about.
Yeah, a band that maybe the directors knew. You know, it's like, hey, we put you in our movie. We
Free
can't pay
promo.
anything.
Yeah, blew the budget on Gilligan's Island.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's like the movie cost $60K, and $57K went toward licensing.
Yeah, right.
Gilligan's Island.
I mean, they returned that camera, so they got a little bit back.
I'm going to say it has to be, because like the first thing I thought about 90s wise was like, if you're looking for your car, like I've gotten where I've parked and I forgot where I parked and I just open up my phone. I'm like, where's my car? And it's like, I can find it. So, I mean, unless there's magical, mystical auras that are making my cell reception not work.
Paper maps.
Yeah, paper maps I haven't touched a paper map in so long.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Having to read that topographical information. No thanks. Does this hold up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's still scary.
I'm not sure if I would watch it again, just for me, just because I've seen it twice now. I think it definitely holds up academically.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Sure. I mean, you still have to kind of put yourself in the mind space of 1994 in order
Yes.
for it
Right.
to work. Just like any good horror movie like Psycho, you have to put yourself in 1960, or Night of the Living Dead in 1968. So,
Right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody going into it now would have the same reaction to it that
No.
we probably all did.
Yeah.
Just because, we saw it much,
The cultural context is a lot different. Like,
right.
We're
right.
not-
Yeah, because an 18-year-old has always had internet
Right.
and a
Yes.
cell phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
Despite that, though, I think it's still a pretty strong.
So this is a good movie.
I think
yes.
so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's one of the classics of horror,
Yeah,
in my
For
opinion.
sure.
I think it's good in context when you know more information around the movie. And maybe this
Okay.
is me because I watched it and I was like, okay, it was interesting. But it didn't really stand out to me. But then I read more about like how it was made, the marketing campaign around it, reading more about that. As a whole, that all is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that all is good. But I had a hard time rewatching it, except for like those few scenes that stand out.
Why was it hard?
I think for me it was because all of the
Pacing?
people clashing, it was very realistic, which is, that's a plus in the movie's
That's
favor.
stressful.
But it's also like it can be kind of really annoying to like watch.
Frustrating.
But it's all necessary for those scenes.
Right.
So I recognize that it's good. It wasn't as watchable as I thought it was, but it was definitely more interesting having read more about it.
It was more watchable than I expected it to be.
I don't know. It's one of those go-tos, I feel like, for us. Maybe not every year on Halloween, but most years we'd watch it.
This movie still makes The Woods creepy to me. It
Right.
easily fits into, if not my top 10, the top 15 easily. I mean, this movie is of a time and place that we just don't have anymore.
Right.
But
And that's the thing. Like, I think you guys have the nostalgia that maybe we don't.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that could be part of it.
well, and I'm also curious to see what someone younger would think of it, because I
Yeah.
think this also
Right.
helps
Right.
with it being found footage. Just be like, hey, these are some kids from 1994. See what happens to
They
them.
didn't
and
have
see-
Instagram.
It's true. You could really creep out some kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love this movie. I'll go to bat for it every time.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I love it too. It's in my top 10.
Yeah, I mean, and not to mention all the behind the scenes things make it infinitely interesting. But even as a movie on its own, I think it holds up.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for.
I like that the characters are not likable.
Yeah.
I respect that. Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for just everything that went into it.
Yes. Very imaginative, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely in my top 20 horror films. Definitely.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Like, I probably haven't seen 20 horror films, but I
Watch
would
Annihilation.
probably agree.
It's good.
Yeah, I know. I need
Kind of
to.
science fiction horror stuff. It could be either. I mean, you can make a case for either.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that sci-fi is my thing. I got to
Mm-hmm.
do that a little more. Because if I'm going to go to bat for Wing Commander,
Have you seen Edge of Tomorrow?
Edge of Tomorrow is really good.
It's good. Just go into it blind.
okay,
Ignore like your hatred of Tom Cruise. Just enjoy it.
all right.
Oh, both Blade Runners. See both Blade
Oh.
Runners if you haven't seen them.
I was gonna say if it helps,
really? Okay.
if it helps motivate you to watch Edge of Tomorrow, it's based on a manga that was, or a light novel that was illustrated by the guy who did Death Note.
Oh, okay.
So
Didn't know
Okay.
that.
it's called All You Need Is Kill.
Of course it is.
Also, ignore the title.
Yeah, so just think of it as a live action anime, and then
Yeah, that'll get me on board.
Yep.
With Tom Cruise.
That's fine.
That's right.
I think that's about it. Will this hold up in another 20 years?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, they give you enough cultural context to make it hold up, I think.
It's basically a period piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like those age a lot better than anything else.
Yes.
Like, despite it being made 5 years after it's supposed to take place. Like,
Right. I feel like if you like horror films, you should just watch The Blair Witch and you would enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be fine in another 20 years.
I mean, as he was saying, I think it's just going to continue to be one of the classics of horror for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also not to mention, it wasn't the first, but it basically found footage for horror movies.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
Put it on the map for sure.
It did. Yeah, I mean, the other movies had that negligible to no effect on pop culture, where Blair Witch did.
I mean, God, the effect on pop culture, all the Blair Witch spoofs
Yes, I know.
Well, and I mean, people may not have seen it, but everybody has heard of it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And no one really, when they talk about Cannibal Holocaust, they don't say, oh, look at this really cool movie. It's more like, let's watch this messed up movie.
Right, exactly. It becomes more of a rite of passage than anything. And it's like,
it's a novelty.
Right.
Oh, I kind of enjoyed Cannibal Holocaust. I mean, there are parts we will say that are not great.
I have yet to see it.
I think the worst parts of that movie are the actual animal butchering.
Yes, which is real.
I've never seen this movie.
That's why I haven't gone there yet.
Yeah, because it's being filmed. I'm not sure if they were actual natives that were part of the movie.
Yeah, they were.
So they were cooking animals like they would cook animals in nature.
Right.
So you just watch this turtle
get
turned into turtle soup.
And in fact,
I'm fine with that.
The animals that did sacrifice them, well, maybe not themselves, but the tribe did eat them afterwards, so they didn't go to complete waste. But
that's good at least.
You're still seeing a
slaughter.
It's still hard to
material.
see.
Yeah, they could not put no animals were harmed in the filming of this movie.
No, maybe it's like a lot of animals were harmed, and so you better appreciate this movie.
Yeah, like y'all don't even have to show up. Like, we know. All right, is that it? Any further thoughts?
Let me check my notes.
Yeah.
I think we hit all mine.
I thought I was going to take more notes than I actually did.
Yeah, I got half of the standard for this one.
Most of what I took was trying to keep track of the plot and realizing at the end that was a fool's errand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that was kind of the point.
Yeah.
To lose track of time.
For sure.
Alrighty. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was great. I appreciated that.
That was a good one.
Thanks for the
That
spooks.
was fun.
$19.99 lives on at geekspective.com, where you can find other goofy podcasts like this one. You can reach out to this show on the social medias at PlitGif, PLITGYIF. That's Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. And you can find me on Tumblr at Competent Pop. So I will talk to you next time. Hope to see you at the next party.